Connecting to JMS queues. JMS, or Java Messaging Service, is a widely used API for enabling applications to communicate through exchanging messages. It simplifies application development by providing a standard interface for creating, sending, and receiving messages, and supports two messaging models: point-to-point queues, or topics, which are a pub-sub model. In the queue model, or point-to-point, these are typically one-to-one, where a sender delivers messages to a queue and a single receiver will pull the message off the queue when it's available. The receiver does not need to be listening to the queue at the time the message is sent. Pub-sub, or publish-subscribe, based on topics is typically one-to-many, where a publisher will send a message to a topic and then all active subscribers of that topic will receive the message. Subscribers that are not actively listening to the topic will miss published messages unless your broker supports the notion of durability, which will allow the subscriber to come back online and get any messages that it may have missed. Now, for connecting to JMS queues, it's quite easy. We have a JMS transport that provides the ability to send messages via JMS queues and receive them. The JMS connector is a generic connector for sending and receiving messages over JMS queues and can connect to any JMS messaging service that implements the JMS spec. It lets you send and receive messages to queues and topics respectively. The out-of-the-box support are ActiveMQ and WebLogic JMS, and others are supported by a generic JMS or custom JMS configuration: HornetMQ, OpenMQ, Solus JMS, and Tibco EMS. You can find examples in our documentation. And then lastly, WebSphere MQ, which is a Mule Enterprise enhanced transport that you can use with an enterprise subscription. So let's get into walkthrough 11.4, connecting to a JMS queue, ActiveMQ. In this walkthrough, we'll create a flow accessible at localhost 8081/JMS. We'll add and configure an ActiveMQ connector and use a JMS endpoint to retrieve messages from that JMS topic. We'll add messages to the topic using a web form and use a JMS endpoint to send messages to a JMS topic. Let's get started. Start off inside of APDev examples. Inside of source main app, we'll go to new, and we will create a new Mule configuration file. We'll call this configuration file jms.xml and hit finish. We're going to start off by getting messages from JMS off of a queue. To do this, we'll bring in a JMS endpoint into the canvas, and we'll start by renaming the flow so that it's called getTopicMessageFlow, or messagesFlow, make sure it's plural. We can then select our JMS endpoint at the very beginning, and in the JMS property view, we'll make sure that it's selected to one way. And the topic that we're going to choose here is going to be called AP Essentials. This is a topic that we are going to be pushing messages to as well, so be sure to check your spelling here. You want it to say AP Essentials. Now, let's go ahead and open up our student files. And inside of our student files within the snippets, we are going to look for the ActiveMQ broker URL. So if we search for ActiveMQ, we'll see a link, or text rather, to the ActiveMQ broker URL, which should be this TCP address. Let's now expand source main resources, and inside of example-dev.properties, which, by the way, you may have more properties here than I do, that's quite all right. Let's just make sure we add in another property line for jms.broker, and we set the value to that TCP address. We'll save this file and head to our global XML file, and specifically in the Global Elements tab. In Global Elements for Global XML, I want to create a new connector with you for ActiveMQ, so we will hit Create. And inside of here, let's put in ActiveMQ and select the ActiveMQ JMS connector. We'll then hit OK. And instead of the default broker URL, let's change it to say jms.broker inside of here. We'll change our specification to version 1.1, and we should be ready to communicate using this configuration. So we'll hit OK inside of here. Now, in order to run this and make it work successfully, we do need the libraries for ActiveMQ. So we are going to check out the ActiveMQ jar from our student files. If we go to Finder, or your browser rather, and open up the jars from your student files, you should be able to locate the ActiveMQ all jar. Now, we just use ActiveMQ all for example use cases. It has more libraries than what are required, so it's not recommended if you are going to interact with ActiveMQ that you use the ActiveMQ all library. Check out the MuleSoft docs for ActiveMQ to get details about what jars you should use. But in this training example, this will be a good all-encompassing library we can use for our simple use case. we'll drag ActiveMQ all into the APDev examples project and go ahead and copy that over. So it should drop it to the bottom of our project. Now we want to make sure this is part of our build path. So we'll right-click on the jar file, select build path, and add this jar to the build path. Now that it's part of referenced libraries, when we start up this application, we aren't going to receive the message around not having the correct jar. Again, you might have more reference libraries than I do here, like the MySQL jar. That's perfectly fine. But at least for this example, we want to make sure we have the ActiveMQ jar inside of here. Now we'll go back to our JMS XML file. And inside of here, we can now see that we have our topic. We'll drop down the connector and make sure that ActiveMQ is selected inside of here. We'll also go to the end of the flow and drop in a logger for easier debugging. And let's go ahead and make sure that this logger logs out the payload. All right, let's save this in place and run the application as is. Once it's deployed successfully, we can go out to a web browser and we can head to the web address that will allow us to post messages to the broker, which is mu.mulesoft-training/JMS. And this should bring up the following form. Now, if you put a name in here, such as Max, and a message such as hello, and hit send, this will actually send a message out to the JMS server. Back in Anypoint Studio, you should be able to see from the logger message processor that you're actually getting this message back from Max around hello. So you can go in and you can play around with a debugger and see some of the information that's coming off the JMS broker. For example, I'd challenge you to go in and check it out, see if you can get Max's name out of here as well, using debug mode and seeing what's available to you. But for now, let's go ahead and see if we can queue messages up using an outbound endpoint. So very similar, the JMS endpoint, similar to the file connector that is, the JMS endpoint has a output-oriented endpoint. So we'll make one more flow with HTTP. We'll call this one publish message to topic flow. The HTTP connector can use our existing connector config, and in this case, it can be a get command. So that would go down here, and the path inside of here would be JMS. Okay, so that's JMS path, out loud methods is get. We'll put in our JMS connector inside of here. Again, this is going to go to a topic, and we'll actually put it to the exact same topic, AP Essentials, so that when this produces to the topic, this flow should consume from the topic. Our connector details, we use ActiveMQ. All right. And now what we'll attempt to do is grab some query parameters off of the message and send those up to the queue. So what we can do here is bring in a setPayload transformer right in front of JMS. The value of setPayload is the message.inbound properties. And specifically, let's grab the key from HTTP query params, and let's use message inside of here. So .message. So whatever query parameter we send in with message is going to be applied here. Now at the very beginning, and maybe we'll make this a little bit more distinct so it's not the reserved message, we'll say something like message body. Okay. And before that, we'll make another expression here and put a colon in between the two expressions where we'll grab effectively the same thing, except in this second case, instead of doing message body, let's do name. So we will have a query parameter of name that will then say name and print a colon out. And then after that colon, we will get the message body that will then be published to the JMS queue. So we'll save this up. If the application was already running, it should restart without an issue. And once it restarts successfully, we'll try sending this request in using Postman. All right, over to Postman, we can come inside of here and we can say the JMS endpoint, again with our query parameter, and we will say name equals Max, ampersand, and we will do message body equals hello, and we can use plus signs here, so hello from Max the mule. All right, and we'll send this request in. Now we get that body right back to us, which is great. if we go back to Anypoint Studio inside of here, you'll notice inside of your logger down from this top here, it logged the message coming into the broker. So that topic it got pushed out to, and then the consuming flow picked it up and it says Max, hello from Max the Mule. Simple as that. So just like that, we can produce to a topic, and it could have been a queue as well, but we produced to a topic in this example, and we also consumed from a topic without issue. This is an example of how to use JMS to connect to a broker and pull messages on and off.